So once again, good evening, everyone. I hope you're well. And we're starting today more practically because lower body is the most complicated one. It requires mostly free weights and lots of general movement, body awareness and good movement patterns. There is so much going on in those lifts, hip thrust, RDL, split squats and squats, that so many things can go wrong and it can be overwhelming. So it's never enough to be going through those lifts. But I wanted to start with a little intro and get you, why is it not working? The agenda. Obviously, we're talking form, we're talking technique to master those. But why do we want to master those? Obviously, for safety, for strengthening core, but also for growth and for keeping yourself lean. I always say if you want a nice, tact, tight, lean core, do legs. Do as much legs as you can because your core stabilizes every leg movement and passes the forces from lower to upper. We'll talk about mistakes to avoid, the common ones, the bad form. I actually differentiated bad form and common mistakes because bad form is something that screams for an injury and common mistake is something to tweak, to work on, but probably is not as dangerous as bad form. That is my logics. Setup hacks, how to gain stability on certain lifts and muscle activation. So firstly, a few basic things. We're going to talk compounds. All of those three lifts are compound movements. Compound movements are those that use multiple joints, engage multiple joints, and multiple muscle groups. Why are compounds so important? Why are they so annoyingly hard and taxing on our energy and nervous system? Is because they use so many muscles, including those that we don't see, stabilizers. I will talk briefly, very briefly about those because sometimes we think it's just glutes, but there is more stuff going on in a hip thrust, for example, and the same in Bulgarians. But also because they are crucial compounds, especially leg compounds, for the good ratio of the fat and muscle. Okay, chat, who's joined? Sorry, just rejoining. No worries, Emily. You missed just my intro. So yeah, compounds necessary. Sometimes we can be asked and we sit on the machine and sometimes people I see go to the gym regularly but always jump on leg extensions or abduction. And that doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut with that because it doesn't cause such a high hormonal response of the growth hormone increase and testosterone increase as those big compounds. And knowing to set up and knowing to recover after, taking forever to change weight. But yeah, they are necessary. It's part of the game. The target, obviously, we're talking about the glute complex because there is not just one muscle in the glutes complex. I'll briefly talk about it. It's not about anatomy, but yeah, it probably will be useful for you to understand the mechanics and what actually is going on and what you're feeling, because sometimes you're feeling and asking certain other smaller stabilizing muscles and you're asking me if that's correct. Whatever you feel is always valid, let's put it this way. But whether it's the main muscle, whether it's the stabilizer, we'll talk briefly. We talk hamstrings and quads and core. Core, including your lower back, erector spinae, because it's always involved. That's why, again, whenever we train legs, I say, if you train legs, you're going to have tight core for sure, because it is involved to high levels. So, anatomy. We have three muscles in glutes: glutes maximus, medius, and minimus, hamstring, quads, core, and erector spinae. I separated it, but core, erector spinae comes into core. And let's now show you on pictures what is what. Prime movers in some movements and some stabilizers. Prime mover is basically the main muscle that drives the movement, but needs other muscles that are adjacent that will stabilize the position and contraction. So what is what? So beautiful butts. So this is your glute medius, maximus. This is the biggest muscle. And sometimes people, especially girls, working on their glutes, they only work that muscle. and they think they're going to build a nice shelf here, but that shelf is the medius. And sometimes they kill the abduction machine, and the abduction machine doesn't really hit that muscle that much, a little bit, but just the lower bit. There are better ways of hitting that medius. And there is also minimus. It's hidden, it's under, you can see it here. It wraps under the medius and slightly under the maximus. But these are your main muscles that you will feel, the medius on top and the maximus at the bottom, depending on the movement, whether it's shortened or lengthened position. We talked briefly about it. These muscles are your hamstrings, back of the thigh. I hope everyone knows it, but I know that some new joiners will be watching today's video, so I will mention hamstrings, back of the thigh, and quads, front of the thigh. We have 3 muscles in the hamstrings, 4 in the quad, but just to simplify this, we always call it quad, hamstrings. You don't need to know more. If you are interested, go and do your research or speak to me separately, but today not about it. So firstly, we start from hip thrust because I was expecting mostly girls. I think we're going to have one boy joining later on, but we'll see. My boys also do hip thrust. I literally have a few gems, the remnant of my old times being a PT. And they all do hip thrust, and I don't understand why someone would miss such an important, massive muscle. This is actually your biggest muscle in the whole body. It's not the quad, because when we think quad, we think the whole thigh. But quad has 4 smaller muscles, as you can see, and gluteus maximus is the biggest muscle. So why on earth would you not train your biggest muscle that stabilizes your movement, your lower back? Don't want to dwell too much on it, but while we hip thrust, we extend the hips. So think of your starting position, whether it's on the machine, off the floor with the bar, you're always going to push the hips up, and they go from this position to the extended flat, yeah? And that's your hip extension on the top. The muscles, obviously maximus, mainly maximus, so that big butt under butt. That's what nicely scoops here. But your other medius and minimus will be involved for stabilization. So it's not that we're just targeting one. It's, again, not an isolated movement. And sometimes you may also feel your hamstrings, a tiny bit of quads, but more if you feel predominantly hamstring or quad. That will mean you're probably not set up right with your feet position. Interesting facts from scientific, not bro gym science. Hip thrusts are actually much better to maximize your glutes than any squat or lunging pattern. So if boys tell you, or if any gym bro tells you, why don't you do squats to grow your glutes? You show them the middle finger and talk about the science behind. There is the biggest activation of glutes in this contraction, shortened position, because think of when your glutes are under max tension. If you're sitting like that, this is your upper, this is your lower, then you're going to push the hips up, your glutes activate in the biggest point and in the shortened position. So they are squeezed, yeah? We talk about RDLs when they work in the lengthened position. So that beats by far squats and lunging patterns. We'll talk a little bit more about it soon. And know that you're interested mostly in what goes wrong, what can go wrong, and you want to identify if you're possibly making those mistakes. So let's have a look. Firstly, bad form, something that screams for an injury. I've decided to use phrases that are going to stick. Kim Kardashian will appear a few times, and floppy fish will appear a few times, so that you remember those cues. When I used to teach on gym floors, I was always making up things, and people were remembering, oh yeah, that floppy fish. Yeah, exactly, floppy fish. What do I refer to Kim Kardashian? I think you know, it's the extended, hyperextended lower back position. It's not that obvious why Kim Kardashian, but you will understand in RDLs in a second. So that hyperextension in your lumbar spine, this is where erector spinae is. So it's like a flat sheath of the muscle in your lower back that stabilizes, it kind of wraps you and stabilizes your hip position. If that happens, all those muscles are screaming for mercy. They are not supposed to be hyperextending. People with hypermobility will find it really difficult to feel when to stop, how far is far. And we'll talk about good form in a second. But for those that have natural ranges, their tendons and ligaments don't allow such a big movement in the hip joint or in any joint, because when people are hypermobile, they're mostly hypermobile in all joints, even between the vertebrae. That's crazy how their spines can move. So for, I think you girls that are currently here on the call, I'm not just, yeah, none of you is actually hypermobile. At least I haven't noticed massive arches there. Will be more of body and core awareness. So Kim Kardashian must die, okay? And we're talking only in fitness. Let the girl live. But what happens with that massive hyperextended lumbar spine is also you get, and I should have actually added here, a baby belly, like a big balloon, which is an immediate consequence of the hyperextended back. It screams lower back pain and deactivates glutes. You lose the tension on top position from there. Another mistake in that Kim Kardashian position, let's call it, is toe elevation. I would normally probably talk about it more as a common mistake rather than bad form, but very often does it lead to hyperextending because you want to get so high, you want to be so tall, and that toe elevation turns out not to be a little mistake, but leads to bad, dangerous form. So toes flat. We will talk about good form in a sec, but first I want you to go through all the scary things and finish with the beautiful scenario of a perfect form on each of those lifts. Another thing would be head back. So this is that guy that strains your neck, your cervical spine. So it is not a common mistake. It is bad form, and if repeated over and over and over, will finally wear and tear the discs and the vertebrae in your cervical spine. So remember, neutral chin. I like sometimes tacking it even more just to at least not flopping my head. Sometimes probably also too much as well, but I find it safer because there is no kind of more natural movement coming down than kind of straining that way. And that also can cause choking. Trust me, if you're breathing wrong, so many things can go wrong with what's happening here in trachea. So looking up to the sky is a no-no. And also that guy, this is on the, like at first look, it's similar to Kim Kardashian. But what he really does is he keeps his upper back steady, unmoved on the bench, and moves just the hips. So literally hip, follow that movement pattern, that trajectory of the red line here. And that again screams lower back position because you only move your hips rather than the whole spine. Your spine is supposed to be like a wooden plank, one piece, solid. So this is bad form. If you're doing any of that and you don't know how to correct it, talk to me. I have a notice. I review your videos. Those that have been longer in the program, I'm pretty sure that you're doing things well, but if I see any crazy PBs, obviously I will ask you for a video because form can go very easily, very quickly wrong, even if you're an advanced lifter. So this is a total no-no, immediate to eliminate if any of that happens. Then there is stuff that I decided to differentiate as common mistakes. Toe drive. When you push off your toes, you're gonna deactivate glutes and you're gonna get your quads more engaged. Not a biggie, but could become a biggie because if you push too much through your toes, you're risking driving your whole body forward and kind of crossing the ankles with your knees, and that screams kneecap. Okay, your patella is only able to maintain certain forces, and it does not like that force, especially if it's not been strengthened in that way. Obviously, we walk down the stairs, it's challenged that way, but so that's why I put it as a mistake. But pay attention to it if you, and we do the hip thrust for glutes. heels down, but toes also down. Drive through the heel, but keep the toes down. Then feet too close. So this is when your heels are before the knees. Let's go back to that picture actually. So that it's almost probably, if she wasn't hyperextending, her knees and ankles would be in one alignment, and that is good. If her heels were here, where my cursor of the mouse shows, that will be too much quad activation, yeah, front thigh. If her feet were somewhere far away here, that would give her too much hamstring activation. So feet too far, feet too close, it's a mistake. It's not a drama, but we do hip thrust for a reason. Losing tension on top. What I mean is, one, when you hyperextend, you're going to lose tension on top. And that's why I force you to lock on top. Like, to be honest, the newest research says that you don't need to even squeeze and pause, but for the reason that we think we do it. It's not extending time under tension, and I actually believed in it for years. I'm still believing it makes sense even for that, but recent research shows that there's very little difference whether we're squeezing. But what it does, and why I force you, and I do it myself, is the tempo of the lift. It tidies it up. It lets you differentiate between concentric and eccentric, and it changes, like rewires the brain. Okay, well, I've reached my full range, and you can connect to the glutes. Because how do you know if it's a full range if you straight away let the bar and hips drop down? That's why we lock, and that's why I'm a fan of that, especially with beginner lifters. But again, I've been lifting for so long, and I still do it because it tidies up my tempo, and I can, in my head, to kind of count down into the eccentric. So these are just a mistake. Let's go and erase all of that. I mean, have it somewhere at the back of your mind, but let's come out of talking about hip thrust with the correct form, okay? So correct form would be 90 degrees. I mean, it's not a drama if those feet are a little bit forward. It might happen, especially when you're using machines and depending on your height. The hip thrust machines, not everyone has them in the gym. Hi, Sam. You've just joined once we're finishing about hip thrust, but not too bad. We are 1/3 in. So 90 degrees, it's not a drama if your heels are a little bit forward, but not too far, because again, you're going to engage your hamstrings too much. And if those feet are really far, your knees are almost straight, extended, you might actually strain your hamstrings. They are not supposed to be lifting in that position. So careful with that. I would say the easiest cue, 90 degrees in the knees. Heel drive, but toes down, okay? So remember, foot stays flat, 90% sits on the heel, but toes are gripping. It's going to be the same for your RDLs, and that is very, very common to elevate those toes, because you've heard so much heels, heels, heels. That is true, heels, but we have toes for a reason. They grip and give us balance, stability. So 10% of the weight distribution on the toes. Rib cage down. So compare this beautiful lady to that guy. You see that rib cage up and you see the baby belly. That is wrong. This is hyperextended. Rib cage down. And the chin tucked. So it kind of keeps the neck in a neutral position, compared again to that eyes to sky, straining your cervical spine. And now, very important, how to get to that beautiful straight line between knees, hips, and shoulders. It's going to be through core engagement and that lock that I've just talked about. So lock on top, that was a mistake if there's no lock on top. But again, I'm a fan to lock, because you can actually feel if your core is engaged. Your core, imagine, what does it mean to engage your core? Expects a punch. Like if someone literally was approaching with the fist to your tummy, you would tense. This would be your autonomous nervous system. And we need that, but consciously, yeah? That is your conscious tightening. in all lifts, whether we're doing upper, lower, machines, isolation, you need to engage your core every single time. It's just that it's more dangerous and leads to wrong form and more risks on free weights, especially on your lower body. And that's why I like locking out with your glutes for a second. It doesn't need to be high pat. It doesn't need to be 2-3 seconds, but sometimes you will see in your programs 2-second lock. I'm doing it deliberately because you're probably not even locking for 1 second when I ask you to do one, Pat. Yeah, but you're not alone. I promise you. It is very, very common because it's the most difficult position when your muscles are under most tension, and we want to get out of it. We just don't want to control it once it's at the max contraction. But that's why I do 2, sometimes 3 seconds. If you can't count to 1, okay, you're gonna pay the price. Let's go for 3. And once you've got 3, then I'm being reasonable again. We strip it down to 1 second. So that's your beautiful hip thrust form. When do we breathe? Any ideas? Because breathing, can someone actually, yeah, I got you. Do we breathe in? Oh, actually, yeah, maybe in. When do we breathe in? Like once imagining we have a bench and a free bar, you don't have a machine, it's going to be the same. We can relate it, but when would you breathe in? When would you breathe out? So breathe in at the bottom or on top?
On the bottom.
Okay.
On the bottom.
Okay, got you. And it's a tricky one because your lift starts, and I mean that's partially true, and it's true and it's not true. So imagine your starting position. For sure, you want to take the breath in to engage the core, yeah. But then from the bottom, you're gonna be exhaling, coming up, and you're gonna take another quick breath before you go down. Okay, so you were right, you were not wrong, but there is 2 points where we take the breath in after the first rep, because the first rep brings you from a static, from 0 force position. So just to get an object into movement, and an object being your butt and the bar or the machine, we need to brace and prepare all stabilizers in the core to get the job done and to even recognize what's going on, because only you know it's 100 kilos, but your rector spinae doesn't yet know it. So always deep breath in, brace the core, expect the punch before every lift, any lift. Cool. Now the hacks for setup. Who's using the machine? Who's got the machine in their gym? Because it's a life changer. I bloody hated all the gyms without hip thrust, but it was a good lesson of mainly patience, humbling me and my time frames, but also, yeah, the setup. And most gyms, let's be honest, don't have the machines. So no one wants to talk. Okay, whoever has the machine, you can scrape it, but actually, why not listen? Because you travel, you go to hotels, and most hotel gyms will not. I actually have never been in a hotel that had a hip thrust machine. So setting up from the floor with a bar. First of all, forget the fixed bar. If you're already on this program, you're never going to use a fixed bar for hip thrust ever in your life, okay? Because 1, it's a pain in the ass to set up, and 2, it's too light, let's be honest. So if you can hip thrust 40 kilos, you deserve a big bar. Big bar is 20 kilos. And in most gyms, at least, 10 kilo plates, so 10 on each side, would be big ones, okay? So you would set up the bar for 40 kilos, even if it's your warm-up, or even if it's your work set, fine, and you can do your warm-up set with a dumbbell. Forget the fixed bars. So sit on the floor against the bench. Bench at mid-scapula. Your scapula are your shoulder blades, okay? This is more physiological name. So mid-scapula, let me move my back towards you for a sec. Here. Okay, so it's not really mid back, but it's mid shoulder blades. Not too high, because you're gonna get on traps. not too low, because you're gonna get onto thoracic, and just literally here. So mid-scapula. You lean against the bench, making sure that mid-scapula are there, and you're gonna, still keeping the back on the bench, reach out with the toes maximally to the floor. Wherever your fingers land, that is where your heels should be. And that is a quickest setup. At least gives you some sort of benchmark, so you're not guessing and then playing with your feet. If there is any difference and you maybe leaned too far forward or didn't lean far enough, there will be a difference of 5 centimeters, but you're not going to be blindly looking where your feet should be once the bar is already on your hips. Then barbell. It seems obvious, but trust me, I've seen videos from ladies just hip thrusting 50 kilos without a pad. So it needs to be said. Use a pad. If your gym doesn't have a pad, use a mat. If you're lifting super heavy, use a pad and a mat. And if you're lifting super heavy, use 2 mats. That's what I used to do. So honestly, there's nothing worse than feel this bar on your pelvis and you still feel it. And until your body gets used to the load, you might feel like you're bruised just through the load of the bar. Feet, shoulder width. Toes can be flaring slightly out. I wouldn't move them too far, but just slightly to force your knees to follow. Your knees also out. Common mistake I should have probably added is caving your knees in on top. That would mean your weak stabilizing muscles, your medius and your minimus. Okay, if your knees cave in, those can't fire up on the top position. That will mean we need more strengthening for those two. Push the bar away. That is one thing that I don't see often. You're doing it, and I see that bar bouncing back forth. Even if it's that much as that bar wobbles on top, it throws you off the trajectory and it wastes your energy. So once you push the bar away. Once you push your hips up, push the bar away to the point that you can even lock your elbows. So that bar sits on one place. It doesn't come up once your hips drive up. And that's your hip thrust. Any questions? Is this clear? Is this helpful? How I at least thought of
Yes.
breaking it down. Nice, Emily. Maria, hi, thumbs up. Okay, RDLs, Romanian deadlift, the glute lengthener. So remember your hip thrust, glute shortener. Your glutes are under most tension, squeezed. On RDL, it's opposite. They are under biggest tension when they are extended because we're hip hinging, so moving hips back. And we need to emphasize, we always need to emphasize eccentric control, but especially in that deadlift, because so many things can go wrong if we drop the bar down too fast. Muscles engaged, your glute max again, but hamstrings, long, like big time, all 3 muscles in your hamstrings. Erector spinae, we know now it's the lower back sheath muscle, like wrapping you around. So they do work because so many of you complain, oh, maybe, okay, I shouldn't say complain, but mention my lower back hurts. And I always ask, how does it hurt? Is it like an excruciating pain that next day you can't do your shoelaces standing? Or is it just one day and it passes by? Is it dull? Is it constant? Is it pinching? Is it sharp? So you have to differentiate. Your erector spinae, so your lower back works in that movement, but you should be able to tell like whether it's, oh, the muscle worked, or oh, I probably overworked it. And overworking will happen due to a few reasons. I'll tell you in a sec. So, but so many physios or old school doctors will say, no deadlifts because you have lower back pain. Well, it depends on one injury and the reason why lower back pains. But science, again, I know doctors also science and they are better educated in that anatomy field than myself. But this is, I always say doctors are like, they want to prevent things and keep you away from things that have higher injury than others. So not doing RDLs and doing RDLs is obviously less risk prone than doing them. But actually, Romanian deadlifts, any form of deadlift, strengthens the whole posterior chain. And posterior chain, posterior back from the Latin anterior front. So posterior chain is literally starting from your neck, going all the way down to your heels through your calf muscles and hamstrings and glutes and whole back and the rectus spinae. So that is an absolute king of exercises. It's probably the most technical one, more technical than hip thrust. That's why there is so many things that can go wrong. People don't like them. But I say, if you don't like them, you still didn't grasp them and you've been hammering them for 6, 8, 10, 16 weeks, whatever. Just stop, have a break, pause. Maybe your brain needs to rewire and you're going to come back in 2-3 months and you're going to get better, or at least change from both legs to single leg, or change the equipment and so on and so forth. You can't get better at something if you stop doing it. Yeah, let's be honest. And again, it's a king. So bad form. Kim Kardashian is back, okay? So that excessive arch together, here I put it, together with the baby belly, because it would be like an immediate consequence of the arch. That arch also happens here in the chest. So we getting, because our spine, when you might hear keep your neutral spine or keep your spine neutral. So if you think of a skeleton, there is a curvature, but it's not that hyperextended. So we want to keep a little arch in the lumbar spine, in the lower back, but not that excessive, because again, that means hyperextension. And again, that's a problem for people with hypermobility. Another bad form because of the neck is looking up. And maybe here it's not too obvious, but when you go into your, I don't know if you can see me, if you into your RDLs, all of a sudden, the lower you go, the higher the neck and chin go up. So that crushes your spine, your cervical spine vertebrae. You want to keep the head looking down and neck in neutral spine. Shoulders rolling forward. Yeah, that's not safe because you are constantly under load. Like when you do bent over rows, for example, for back, yeah, you want to extend here because you're almost coming down and there is no big load once you're, especially when you're doing single arm bent over row with a lighter weight. When you're doing your RDLs, your Romanian deadlifts, loads will be higher because obviously you're working lower body, bigger muscles and bigger load capabilities. So if you roll your shoulders forward, you might not maintain the thoracic spine, so your mid-back position, and then you get floppy fish. So your mid-back is not solid. So you might be ending up doing something like, you start there, and not only shoulders roll, but the whole mid-back. And then you're trying, this is the floppy fish that I mean, by the way. Yeah, that's that. Should have called it a wave, but floppy fish will stay in your head more. Looking up is a no-no. And placing all the weight on the heels. That's the same like with hip thrust. With hip thrust, there's not much that can happen if or it's not as unsafe as RDLs. RDLs are the hardest technical lift. So if you put all the weight on the heels, your toes are probably levitating. You're gonna lead to the Kim Kardashian, okay? So this is bad form. Chest is up, head is up, super arched back, leads to lower back pain, but also might lead to mid-back issues and eventually rotator cuff issues under big load, allowing those shoulders coming forward. So cues will be pinch your shoulders, pinch your shoulder blades. We'll talk about cues in a sec. Then what is common mistakes? Not too many, but you can see here, because I put this picture as well, because she's in the lowest position. She's probably short, by the way. She I'm looking because the bar is touching the floor and her knees are not really flexed too much. So that tells me she's probably quite short. And that is another thing. If you're short, rather short, you might feel like the range is small. You might try elevation on your feet so that you allow the bar coming mid shin, because that should be more or less your range for RDL, and but not touching the floor, so you don't lose the tension. Because otherwise, really, ideally, if the bar touches the floor, you should reposition and make it your classic deadlift. Today, I'm not going to talk about difference. We can talk about it separately. But common mistake, it's not so tragic turning it into a squat. If you engage core, but like this looks more like a squat. If she was coming down into RDL and moved her knees forward over the bar, that's why you've got this arrow, that would be your squat rather than your RDL. So I'm looking at the mess behind me and there's no mess. Maybe I will show you what I mean. But I need to stop blurring my background. Do you want me to show you? Firstly, maybe I don't need to. Why do I unblur my background? Do you know, Sam, you're good with is he here? No, he's left again. I think his signal. And just you here. Sam, can I unblur because you're an IT spec? Can I unblur?
You can unblur it, yeah. I think you go to your settings and visual.
Guide me.
Well, I don't know on the phone, I know on the PC, but I think you have to click on your profile to go to the settings.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have to go to your profile, but click on your name, your profile.
Wait, maybe I need to stop sharing, or maybe no, maybe I'll keep it.
No. I think you have to just go to your profile. Do you know where your settings is? Yeah, it's like the logo, your name, like your actual profile.
But we're talking.
Are you on the desktop or a phone?
I'm on PC.
PC. Yeah. Do you know how to get to your settings?
Clearly not. I'm trying to click.
That would help. There must be settings like. What about the little zoom icon in the bottom corner of your PC? Like like on the taskbar. You've got a little zoom icon on the taskbar on the bottom right near the clock.
Wait a sec. Don't stress me. No, I'm too.
Oh, hang on. Okay, I can
leave
see it now.
Yeah. I'm sharing the screen.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't looking. Okay, so you've got an Apple. It's a bit different to Windows. Yeah.
Okay, don't worry, because we're wasting time. But thanks.
Yeah.
I thought it's gonna be. It's never that easy.
Julia, maybe find
what about
those three dots.
The three dots.
Three dots, and if you put the three dots, then you have background.
No, you see
No.
what I've got?
No?
Hide magic cursor, hide live or edit, start auto.
No, it's not in this window. It's a different window.
This. Damn, no, this is not from that. Okay, I appreciate
that. This is your chat window. It will be in the actual Zoom window, the settings window.
Now we're talking. Wait.
Welcome aboard the Southwestern
always
Railway
opens
service to
separate.
Chessington South.
Yeah, because the chat window is different to the actual Zoom application.
Wait, I
So
think.
if you.
Okay, no, I give up because I'm just gonna get annoyed with this. Now I lost you.
My meeting, Zoom.
Yeah.
But where? No, I think I know. Wait. Stop sharing. Come
Welcome
back.
aboard the Southwestern Railway service to Chessington South.
Okay. No, I switched. You
Customize.
See, I lost myself.
Oh, well, we can see you.
I've just closed that window. Okay, sorry, guys.
And Chessington South.
Okay, Sam, thank you. Can you mute for back again, please? I'm back. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, me and computers. Okay, we'll do a more kind of practical, maybe another time, and then I'm gonna set it up because this computer is stationary. So can you see the screen? Because now I mess up so bad.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you for your patience. Everyone's alive. Okay. back to Kim Kardashian. Yeah, so another time maybe I'll just take another laptop and I move to the living room, more open space, and we can practice. And we do maybe just practice. But this, I hope at least it's useful and it shows you statically what's going on. So with those RDLs, I think that's where I was. You see, she's much better than that position, this kind of squatting position. But what I mean, that's a correct form. Sorry, I meant this. Cool. So common mistakes, much better than arching. This is actually a correct form. So I'm trying to show you that you still can get chest over bar, not squatting, which is really bad for the lower back. You still can get bad form, and you still can hyperextend your lower back, and you still can get baby belly if you don't engage the core. So how to do that to avoid the most dangerous, the most risky mistake? So hyperextension. Again, imagine someone wants to punch you, you're going to tense automatically, and you want to keep that tension throughout the whole movement. The back line and the tummy line, so that core again is front, back, and sides. It's not just the six pack. That remains as one solid plank. So you move it all together. There is no floppy fish of your mid-back arching and waving, okay? So core tight, expects a punch. Knees aligned with ankles, or maybe with a slight flexion. So hers, as you see, are not too, are not straight, but her knees are behind the bar. Common mistake is keeping those knees on RDLs too far forward, driving them forward, which again, imagine, I'll try without unblurring the background. So if you're starting this way, if your knees come forward, you're gonna start coming in that position in the squat again. And again, you can't see me too clearly, so let's skip that demos. I hope it makes sense. That bottom line should remind you of heel drive, yes, but toes down, bar close to your shin. Too often do I see the first reps, people picking up the bar of the floor, reaching far. Roll it towards you before you start lifting it. You should be already with your feet under the bar if you're lifting a bar like that off the floor. But there is a hack for this as well, which I'll mention in a second. And you have to, it's not a choice, you have to have a bar really close to your shins, like literally shaving the hair from the shins, okay? And sometimes you will see power lifters actually with scraped shins, and this is because of that. They want to create the smallest pressure on the lower back, and that will be through holding the bar close. Chest over bar, okay? So it overlooks, and here again, look, it stays behind. So obviously she's holding dumbbells, but if she had the bar, that either just will be almost aligned or even already behind the bar. Chest over. And hips back. You focus on the drive of your hips back. The moment your knees drive forward, your hips are looking like, you know, the tail of a scared dog tucked between the legs. That is when you stop driving hips back. And there is a hack for this as well, about it in a second. I think I mentioned all. One more thing, looking down. So that's why I said, instead of driving the chin up, looking up the sky, looking down to keep the cervical spine neutral. Now the setup hacks. Firstly, for those of you that are having RDLs, and I think at the moment, I'm not a fan of the deadlifts, especially if you could try, but if we're talking picking up the bar off the floor, that's a classic deadlift. That shouldn't be done on such straight legs as you maintain for your RDLs. Because if your lower back hamstring glute mobility is not good enough, you're going to compromise that lower back. And that's why I'm a fan of taking the bar off the squat rack or Smith machine, using a Smith machine. About it in a sec. So when you're using your squat rack, make sure the safety bar on which the big bar that you're going to be lifting, what did I say? I think I lost it. So your safety bars from which you're going to lift the big bar are knee height. Okay, so it's also not too high, so you don't need to shrug that bar while approaching the Smith machine or the squat rack, but it sits nicely knee height. So still bar close to your shins, under feet, shoelaces, mid shoelaces under the bar. Engage the lats. What it means, that one you will be able to see without me unblurring the background. So look at this. Those rolling shoulders also could be a result of your lack of lat activation. So that means lat activation. So how do you do that if you have small or low body awareness? Because like if you've never used these muscles, or again, you're not very coordinated, you might find it difficult how to move them. So think of breaking the bar. So imagine you're holding the bar. You won't be able obviously to turn your hands this way, but imagine that movement. And that squeeze will activate your lat. You can even practice empty-handed. Like if you turn your hand in a fist and turn, that activates lats, and that will prevent, at least partially, from those shoulders protracting. And that engages obviously the lats. You can use Smith machine, but if you're shorter, I would be standing on elevation. And also if your Smith machine doesn't go all of the way down, you want to use elevation. So either stand on the step or on two big plates, something that will enable you keeping a full range of motion. Grip. Reverse grip versus straps. Look, if you've been lifting for at least, I don't know, maybe 6 months plus, it's time to get yourself straps, because eventually your grip your glute will outdo your grip. And if you're lifting and you're doing RDLs just without straps, don't be too happy that your grip is so strong. It's either that you're taking it easy or your glutes are not strong enough, and that is ridiculous. Your big butt, like we talked before, your biggest muscles, where are those butts? Let me just remind you, these, you're telling me, are weaker than your grip. Impossible. It might be at the beginning, or probably it's not the case, but we're just not loading you heavily because it's RDL is a very technical lift. So get yourself straps, start using them. You can have straps that go through the wrist, and then you wrap the other end on the bar and you grip through that strap, a bar. You can have those that go onto your wrist and kind of have a metal hook here inside the hand, and you do nothing, you just grip it. And you can have those with double loop. One of you showed them to me, and I've never used them, and I think it might be a revelation. Alternatively, before you go to straps, because also you shouldn't rely on straps straight from a get-go, you want to strengthen your forearms, your wrist. So grip is important, but at some point it will give in. And the only reason why you're not progressing on RDLs is your grip. So reverse grip, stronger hand under, weaker hand over. Okay, always this way, so that weaker arm can catch up with the stronger. So that is your RDLs. Questions, apart from how the hell do I unblur my background? Anyone? Or is this all clear? Can you type in 2, just so I see that you're still awake? And we're gonna finish on Bulgarians. Oh, someone is still awake. Emily. Where are those butts? Exactly. Okay, and last one, Bulgarians. I've decided not to dwell too much on lunges, split squats, lunges, and Bulgarian is the most difficult, most technical out of all unilateral movements. So let's talk about that. Once you grasp the idea of how it works and how to move, you're gonna know how to do the split squat on the floor without back foot elevation. You will know how to step back or step forward, because the mechanics of the movement is the same. So primary action is single leg hip and knee extension. Okay, so Bulgarian split squat or rear foot elevated split squat. A few things going on. Definitely people tell me first thing when I ask them, what are you feeling? Is my quads, my quads. So reasons might be a few. Either you're not activating your glutes enough, your body awareness is not too high, because sometimes I that's pretty common actually. When I ask what muscle do you feel, they tell me the muscle that stretches, but not the muscle that contracts. So that is lack of body awareness rather than doing something wrong. So we need to differentiate between these two. So if you're feeling your quads, and especially maybe let's start from here. Can you tell me which leg? Trying, because this exercise, if done in a certain manner, is gonna be predominantly glute driver. So which leg do we train? The one on the floor, on the one at the bench or step or whatever elevation we use? Front or back? Emily, go on, give it a go. Can you unmute? I'm putting you on the spot, no pressure.
I guess I would have always said the front leg, but I think it's probably the back leg.
That's the front one.
Oh, okay.
Let's
That
talk.
is right then.
Your front
I feel
foot is the loaded
Sorry.
one. It's the working leg. Why did you have doubts about the back one? Because something's going on there, definitely.
I think it was just the way you set up the question. I was like,
Cheeky
yeah,
bitch.
I've got it wrong.
Okay, want to catch you making mistakes. No, I'm joking. But there is no cheekiness in this question, because your back leg, if positioned right, and if you drive your hips back and you hinge the butt, you will feel a massive stretch on your back quad and the hip flexor. So it might be, especially if your flexors are tight, your quads are also like stones, you will feel like that is taking most of your attention and you don't care what's happening in the front leg. But the loaded leg, the loaded glute, hamstring, partially quad is the front leg. So if I say start with your weaker leg, you would always start with that weaker leg on the floor. So main muscle, look, it's the glute max. It's the big butt muscle, okay? So again, we go. And if you don't feel that muscle doing your Bulgarians predominantly, there will be one, either body awareness issue, wrong setup, or not a full range. So obviously, if whatever glute maximus is involved, your medius and your minimus will stabilize. So the knees don't come in. And that knee coming in is not a matter of knee, but it's actually the internal or external hip rotation. That's why we talk about the stabilizing muscles in the butt to avoid knees coming in. Because there's no muscles in the knee. There is a kneecap, a patella, and there's nothing. There's just ligaments coming through. And actually, there is no rotational movement from the knee. And if there is, your ligaments rupture. So, like they can hold a bit of forces. Footballers know something about it, but it is not supposed to be so. And there is a time limit how much those poor ligaments in the knee can take it. That's why never knees in, always out. And again, if you're missing that movement, those beautiful guys, minimus and medius, need to get stronger. So starting. Yeah, so glute max is your main one. You will feel quads and hamstrings and obviously core, but mainly glute max, you should be feeling it, especially girls, the way we do it. But Sam, I also set you up for a glute dominant Bulgarian, because our quads will work with that movement anyway, and they will respond much faster than glutes that are normally underactive for most of us, especially seated forever in front of our desks. At the desk in front of computers. Science behind it, so your split squats are much better for glute activation than squats. Again, remember the gym bro science? Forget the guys that tell you get the squatting going to grow the butt. No, darling. Remember now, hip thrust brings maximum glute activation out of all lower body movement, and split squats are the second. Common bed form, first bed form, obviously Kim Kardashian. It can always be Kim Kardashian with any free weight movement. Even when you think about upper body lateral raises, shoulder movement, if you stand like this and do your lateral raises, that's Kim again. So we need that pelvic tuck and solid plank-like back. Floppy fish can always happen. That mid-back rounding, like there's too much movement that way. Mid-back hunched, that would be the result. Toe drive, and that's very common because this exercise is so difficult for the very simple reason. It's unilateral. So it will strip you down from any cheating, because there is nothing you can cheat having one leg not only elevated, sorry, having the stance not only split, but the other leg elevated. Like it's a master of balance, the exercise. And I know how many of you don't like it. I bloody love them. I don't know, I might be a psycho, but it's just so good for all sorts of reasons. And it's one of those, just get over it. It's not that deep, it's just 3 sets. Get it done, get it first out of the way, and you might even start loving them. So remember, floppy fish, Kim Kardashian, need to die, shoulders rolling forward, the same, because with the good glute dominance for your Bulgarians, you're gonna be leaning forward. So leaning too far forward will be another mistake. So look at this, she's pretty upright, which would be more quad dominant. It's not a mistake that she's so upright, as long as she doesn't do Kim Kardashian. But that massive hyperextension in the quad and flexor screams for an injury, because it's almost like a split. And again, people with hypermobility might be doing it and feel like nothing's wrong, but then in like 3 months, they will have hip problems, like what the hell's going on there? Under the load, and it doesn't also keep your position stable. We are looking at the setup of being much closer to the bench. I'll talk about how to set up for Bulgarians in a sec. Common mistakes is bouncing too much off bottom. Remember, you have eccentric and concentric. Your eccentric is coming down, and that's when the muscle, your butt, is under biggest tension, not on top. And I see so many people squeezing the butts, also on RDLs, also on squats. So imagine your RDL is there under tension, and I see so many doing this, like that squeeze, okay, this. So it's like, again, that position when the dog gets the tail between, like under his bum, not bum, yeah, bum, between the legs. So there's literally that hunch position. We don't need that squeeze. That comes from YouTube videos, like skinny girls always do this. Okay, that reminds me of totally different things. And it is unnecessary because the butt, both in RDLs and Bulgarians, is under biggest tension at the bottom range. So that leads to hyperextension as well in the lower back. But coming back, bouncing off bottom will... Why did I start talking about this? Actually, I'm just thinking, losing balance? No, it doesn't matter. I think it's getting late. I'm going to start wrapping up. But bouncing off bottom will probably happen when you go too low, and you're going to lose tension at the bottom. And instead of using actually the butt and the front foot to drive back up, you're going to use momentum. And that can go wrong. A little bit of momentum is fine. That's why you always want to give yourself more force on that contractive phase, concentric, but not too much, so that you completely lose the tension at the bottom. And this is where you should have most tension. Losing balance, pushing off rear foot, and you will see it when people are too upright and kind of shift back, holding, thinking that the back foot gives them balance. But the more you lean forward, actually, the better your balance. And again, you're too close or too far to the elevation, whether it's a bench, a stool, a step. Correct form. So this is for your Bulgarians. that are glute dominant. For my liking, I would have more 90 degrees. I couldn't find a better one. They would at least have such a beautiful torso forward. But you get an idea. She actually has good ankle mobility, so her knee can go a little bit forward without heel elevation. That is not a mistake, but I always simplify things. 90 degrees, so you can hip hinge more, and at least it will prevent you from lifting that heel off. Once you lift the heel off, that is becoming a little bit uncomfortable for the patella again, your kneecap. And it deactivates your glutes, obviously. So again, no Kim Kardashian, wooden plank your torso, your no belly, baby belly, and looking forward. Sometimes as well, when I see people doing Bulgarians, they start lifting with the head first. It doesn't help. It doesn't give you more force. Again, it causes that unnecessary excessive tilt in the neck. So core engage, chest up, control your descent. That's your eccentric. Tricks for Bulgarian setup. Sit on the edge of the bench. Would be nice if I could unblur the background again. But imagine you've got a bench that you're going to be doing Bulgarians from. Sit on the edge. Extend one leg and push with your hands off the bench with the opposite leg just for balance. That is going to be the distance of the work leg, which we know now is the front leg, from the bench, yeah? Back foot positioning, how to position it. So you see in those pics, they actually have toes down. I'm not a fan because it's easier to lead to this hyperextended hip flexor quad position, but also you see by him, and it will prevent you from going all the way down. So you won't reach full ranges. And it actually hurts more the ankle in the position that matters most, which is down. It might feel more comfortable here, but you shouldn't be spending much time on this position. It's just start and come down. And the lower you come forward, the more you lean forward, the less you will feel the ankle discomfort. This will only prevent you. So if your ankle mobility is poor, you might find it impossible to place it this way. So there is a trick. You can use it in the gap of the bench because every bench has a long part of the pad and where you put your asses on, right? You sit down. And if you elevate the back pad, you will form like a little angle at this point, and that's where you can put your foot. You can place a mat there, just not to be touching the metal bit of the bench. But yeah, that would hold you at least so you don't wobble and your foot doesn't slide. Another trick is on the squat rack or on the Smith machine, on the bar, and you just place your toes. Your toes here. Can you see? Yeah? So nowhere near the ankle, mid-foot, toes. And you could also use a hip pad on the bar, on the squat rack. Or you could also use, that's a cheeky one, depending how busy your gym is, using a leg extension or curl. You know those pads that go on your ankles for leg extension or leg curls? You could place your foot there and it kind of naturally adjusts to that curvature of the ankle. Rear foot elevated. How high? Some of you will be shorter, so a bench might be too high. So make sure that you choose elevation that is your knee height. Too high up and you will compromise ranges. Slight torso lean, okay? Don't make it an RDL on Bulgarian. You compare this to that, okay? It's a slight torso. Kasia, are you asking me something or did you unmute?
Sorry, that
No
was by mistake.
Okay, no worries. And now dumbbells or Smith machine. I mean, Smith machine is such a revelation. It's harder because the top load is harder, but it saves you the balancing issues and you can just lift more because it's kind of less scary. Although, I don't know, I like Smith machine because of the balance, and you can grip hard to the bar, and even if you wobble, nothing's gonna happen. So I prefer Smith machine, but probably not the greatest for the very, very beginners. Grip and straps. Dumbbells eventually will be limited because you should, again, lift heavy enough so that your grip is too weak to hold the dumbbells that you are able to rep for 3 sets. So you might be able to feel comfy on 5 reps, but then 10 reps, and if your fingers are getting stiff, you're going to finally compromise your Bulgarian position, or at least exertion. And using straps for dumbbells is a nightmare. It's possible, but that's why eventually I move you to Smith machine. And finally, literally, this is 3 seconds. Mobility band work and warm-up sets. That's what I mean by muscle activation. I hope everyone at least does a warm-up set before you jump into heavy sets, okay, into your work, or leg work especially. Imagine you're an advanced lifter and you're doing your RDLs and 120 kilos. And you come to the gym. Well, I mean, if you're an advanced lifter, you would never do that. But just an example so you remember. You come to the gym and you just do a few swings, and that way, boom, 120. Your body, your brain, the nervous system are not ready. So make sure that before every first exercise of every muscle group, every workout, you do at least a warm-up set. If you're lazy, if you're short on time, no one is lazy here. I'll take it back. But if you're short on time, skip the mobility work unless you're super tight and you literally, your quads are screaming and you're going to be doing Bulgarians. Then yes, definitely do mobility for these. It's going to be more useful. But definitely warm-up sets. And that's all from me, guys. I'm so sorry about visuals. But that's another, you see, it's still an hour. I thought it's going to be faster. Another one, maybe we do a bit more practically. Maybe I'll do it from a gym one beautiful day. Just an idea, but it won't be in the evening. And maybe I'll do like a live workshop. Ideas like we did in the meet last year. Not last year, in summer. Right, questions. And if not, was it at least helpful, or was I just yapping for the sake of it? Okay, definitely helpful. Fab. Yeah, cool. Only for Emily. Pat is smiling, hopefully for me, to me. Okay, cool.
It was helpful, very helpful.
Love
Thank
it. Yeah, honestly, it's never enough talking about technique. As much as it might be boring, honestly, it prevents so many.
I know myself, it's very hard to do technically all exercises. Even
Yeah.
I thought it's fine, then suddenly you see the videos and telling me that it's not. So
Not everything. You're smashing some, you're not smashing the others. And it's always like that. Something gives, something takes. We're better at one and or the other. And but I always say, like, practice. Let's isolate the stabilizers that maybe are the culprit of maybe not progressing on the lift, or maybe it's body awareness, or maybe not understanding the movement pattern of which muscle actually is supposed to activate and be the prime mover. Yeah, and you start stripping down, and like, honestly, but I still struggle with some things, and sometimes I strain some things. Like it happens. It happens to the best. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm saying it happens to the best. Especially if you focus, oh, I'm growing glutes, but then all of a sudden I forgot how to do a pull-up, or other way around. Life. Cool. Thank you. I'm not going to hold you anymore. Loved having you here, and I'll see you on the next one.